The sanctions, they are tough. Russia, arguably the most sanctioned large country, at least in the world. But do they go far enough?
Thanks, Brian. And the other thing to bear in mind, beyond the sanctions, you have over 450 Western businesses who have self-sanctioned, who have de-risked and voluntarily exited Russia, even going further than what the sanctions have obliged them. That being said, you still have the situation where energy is largely exempted from the sanctions that have been put in place thus far, which is fueling funding this invasion into Ukraine.
Is there any kind of new specific sanction, one we or Europe do not have on yet? Maybe a direct sanction of oil and natural gas by Europe, something they have not done and do not want to do. Is there something we can do which would really sort of be the vice grip on Putin?
And those energy sanctions really are that further tightening of the vice grip on Putin. There's certainly some disagreements between the EU and US on the scale of Russian energy sanctions. I think you may begin to see, obviously, with the deal that was announced last week with the US supplying LNG to Europe, which is not an immediate fix to the situation and replacing Russian energy, you may see sanctions that reduce the ability to buy across Europe, limitations on purchasing of Russian oil and LNG. The other lever that hasn't been thrown is secondary sanctions. Secondary sanctions, which we've talked about before, essentially force foreign companies, foreign countries from doing business with the target of sanctions or the US or other Western allies, but not both. So for countries like China and India that continue to buy, you could have a situation where they're forced to choose through those sanctions, although they have a limited track record of actually being enforced.
Quickly, Dan, eventually Putin will be gone. Whether and how that is going to be left up to history. Do you believe the sanctions, though, will be left on even if the war ends, as long as Putin is in power?
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. doesn't have a great track record of regime change historically, but these sanctions will remain on for some time to come. If President Putin were to be out of power today, if the Russian military were to leave Ukraine today, these sanctions will be in place for some time to come, essentially erasing the decades of economic growth that we've seen in Russia.